Imagine owning the entire world and then losing it all in less than a decade. Not gradually, not slowly, in a cliff-edge fall that accelerated with every passing year until there was nothing left to measure. In 2008, more than half of every smartphone in America was a BlackBerry. By 2017, that number was 0.0%. Not a decline, not a retreat, a disappearance. The company that presidents carried, that lawyers lived on, that Wall Street couldn't function without, gone from the smartphone market entirely. This is not just a corporate obituary. This is a warning about what happens when the most powerful company in an industry refuses to see what's coming directly at them. And the most painful part? BlackBerry saw it coming. They just refused to believe it. The story begins in 1984 in Waterloo, Ontario, Canada. A University of Waterloo engineering student named Mike Lazaridis had an idea that most people would have dismissed instantly. He co-founded a small company called Research in Motion, or RIM. The company didn't start by building smartphones or phones of any kind. It focused on wireless connectivity technology and pagers, devices that most of the world hadn't figured out how to use yet. For 15 years, RIM operated completely in the shadows. Nobody tracked its progress. Nobody wrote about it. But inside those quiet years, something important was happening. Engineers were learning how to send wireless data across distances. They were building technology that nobody else even understood yet. Lazaridis was obsessed with one simple idea. What if executives could receive email instantly? Not hours later, not the next morning, the moment someone pressed send. He wasn't building for regular families or teenagers. He was building for lawyers, executives, and government officials who needed instant connection and trusted security above everything else. By 1999, RIM launched the Inter@CTIVE Pager 950, a two-way pager that sent and received email wirelessly. It wasn't a phone, it was a foundation. And in April 2000, RIM unveiled the BlackBerry 957, the first true BlackBerry smartphone. It offered something that changed the business world permanently: push email. Messages arrived the moment someone sent them. You didn't check manually. You didn't wait. The email just appeared on the screen in your hand. For the business world, this was genuinely life-changing in ways that are difficult to overstate. Executives read briefs in taxicabs between meetings. Politicians responded to staff while walking between Senate hearings. Lawyers reviewed documents in airports at midnight. The physical QWERTY keyboard made typing fast and precise in a way touchscreens wouldn't match for years. People loved it so much that they gave it a name that said everything: Crackberry. Because once you started using it, stopping felt impossible. By 2002, RIM added voice calling. By 2003, the company listed on the NASDAQ 100. In 2004, RIM passed 1 million subscribers. By 2005, the two co-CEOs were named among Time magazine's 100 most influential people on Earth. President Obama was famous for refusing to surrender his BlackBerry when taking office, a detail that tells you everything about the device's cultural weight. BlackBerry wasn't just a phone, it was a symbol of power, a credential, a signal that you were someone who mattered and had things to respond to immediately. Nobody imagined it could ever be replaced because nothing had come close to challenging it. The device had created an entirely new behavior pattern in professional life: the constant glance down, the reflexive check, the inability to sit through a meeting without reaching for it. BlackBerry hadn't just built a product, it had rewired how the professional world operated. Then came 2006 and 2007, and everything changed in ways nobody inside BlackBerry was willing to acknowledge. The BlackBerry Pearl launched in 2006, the first model with a camera. Then the Curve and Bold series arrived and transformed BlackBerry from a pure business tool into a mass market phenomenon. Teenagers started carrying them. Celebrities posted photos with them. BlackBerry Messenger, BBM, became a cultural force that crossed every demographic boundary. The distinctive ping sound when a message arrived became one of the most recognizable audio signatures of that era. BlackBerry had moved from executive boardrooms into teenage bedrooms across the entire world. By 2007, RIM became the most valuable company on the Toronto Stock Exchange, worth more than $67 billion. By June 2008, the stock hit an all-time high near $150 per share. The company was selling over 50 million devices per year. Over 50% of the entire US smartphone market was BlackBerry. Globally, it controlled nearly 20% of all smartphones on Earth. The growth appeared permanent. Competitors couldn't get close. Investors threw money at RIM because the profits seemed guaranteed forever. But on a stage in San Francisco, something was already waiting that would destroy everything BlackBerry had built. On June 29, 2007, a man in a black turtleneck held up a small glass rectangle and changed the industry permanently. Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone, a full touchscreen smartphone with no physical keyboard, no tactile buttons, no typing the way BlackBerry users had learned to type. BlackBerry's leadership looked at this device and dismissed it. Mike Lazaridis said something that would haunt him for the rest of his career. He insisted nobody would ever want to type on a piece of glass. He pointed out the battery life was inferior. He noted the device was expensive and locked to a single carrier. He called it impractical for serious business people. And here's the genuinely uncomfortable truth. His technical criticisms were valid. The first iPhone's battery was inferior to BlackBerry's. The virtual keyboard was initially slow and imprecise. The device had real limitations that Lazaridis correctly identified, but he made a catastrophic error in his analysis. He measured the iPhone as a phone. He should have recognized it as an entirely new category of device, a pocket computer that happened to make calls, where the phone function was almost secondary to everything else it could do. That single misclassification cost the company everything. Something strange happened immediately after the iPhone launched. BlackBerry didn't collapse. It actually kept growing. Global market share climbed from 9.6% in 2007 to 16.6% in 2008, peaking at 19.9% in 2009. The growth masked the real threat building underneath. While BlackBerry counted enterprise subscribers who hadn't switched yet, Apple was quietly constructing something that had never existed before. Developers were flooding the iPhone ecosystem with applications. Content was flowing onto the platform at accelerating speed. The iPhone was becoming a lifestyle platform, a device that organized your music, your calendar, your maps, your entertainment, your social life, and your communication in one place. The peak was an illusion. Growth was coming from enterprise customers who hadn't yet switched, not from consumers choosing BlackBerry over iPhone. By the time the illusion broke, the decline was already irreversible. BlackBerry's numbers were lying to the company, and the company wanted desperately to believe them. Every quarterly report that showed growth became a reason not to change. Every positive statistic became an excuse to delay the transformation that survival required. In 2008, RIM understood it needed to respond. The company rushed out the BlackBerry Storm, its first touchscreen device designed to prove BlackBerry could innovate beyond the physical keyboard. Instead, it proved the exact opposite with brutal public clarity. The Storm was panned by every technology reviewer. The software crashed constantly. The interface made no intuitive sense. The design looked nothing like the elegant device it was trying to compete with. The touchscreen had a strange clicking mechanism that satisfied nobody. Keyboard loyalists hated it because it wasn't a real keyboard, and touchscreen fans rejected it because it wasn't smooth like the iPhone. The return rate was embarrassingly high. Consumers who bought it brought it back within days. In 2009, BlackBerry launched App World to compete with Apple's App Store, but App World was nearly empty. Developers didn't want to build applications for a platform steadily losing users. The app ecosystem was becoming the most important competitive weapon in mobile, and BlackBerry was catastrophically weak in exactly that area. The Storm revealed something terrifying about the company's fundamental DNA. BlackBerry understood enterprise hardware, keyboards, secure email, reliable servers. When the market shifted toward touchscreens and applications, BlackBerry was years behind, trying to learn a language that its competitors already spoke fluently. Then 2010 arrived and the situation became a deadly vice. Google released Android at massive scale through Samsung's Galaxy series. Suddenly, BlackBerry was caught between two overwhelming forces. Apple pushing elegance and a premium ecosystem from one direction. Google pushing openness and customization from the other. Samsung Galaxy phones flooded store shelves. Bright touchscreens, endless apps, no keyboard anywhere in sight. iPhone owners had hundreds of thousands of applications available instantly. Android owners had the freedom to customize their devices however they wanted. BlackBerry owners had push email and a physical keyboard. The features that had once been revolutionary now felt like relics from a different era. The consumer market that Lazaridis had originally ignored began abandoning BlackBerry in waves that got larger every quarter. The company was being squeezed from both sides simultaneously, and it had no answer for either. In 2011, something catastrophic happened that didn't just damage BlackBerry. It broke the company's entire identity. A global BlackBerry network outage lasted 3 full days. Millions of users across Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and the Americas couldn't send emails or messages. They couldn't work. They couldn't communicate. BlackBerry's core promise to enterprise customers had always been reliability, the one unbreakable commitment that justified everything else. That 3-day silence destroyed that claim permanently. The real damage wasn't the lost productivity, though that was measured in billions. The real damage was psychological. Millions of users realized they could survive without BlackBerry. That realization gave them permission they had been waiting for. They switched to iPhone and Android in numbers that accelerated from that moment forward. The outage didn't just interrupt service, it severed the emotional contract between BlackBerry and the people who trusted it most. Enterprise customers who had resisted switching for years began quietly exploring alternatives for the first time. The fortress had revealed a crack, and everyone saw it at the same time. In January 2012, Mike Lazaridis and Jim Balsillie resigned as co-CEOs. The founders who had built BlackBerry from a university project into a $67 billion empire were gone. Thorsten Heinz replaced them with a promise of complete turnaround built on one thing: the BlackBerry 10 operating system. The entire company's future was concentrated into a single bet. In January 2013, RIM officially rebranded itself as BlackBerry Limited, the corporate name finally matching the product name for the first time. The Z10 and Q10 launched running the new BB10 operating system. Technology reviewers were genuinely impressed. The hardware looked modern. The software was thoughtfully designed. Critics acknowledged that BB10 was actually good. A real competitor on paper, but something tragic happened that no amount of engineering excellence could overcome. The devices arrived nearly 6 years too late. The app ecosystem was empty because developers had abandoned the platform years earlier. Consumers had already switched permanently. By the end of 2013, BlackBerry's market share had collapsed to under 1%, and the company reported a staggering $4.4 billion quarterly loss. Not millions, billions, in a single quarter. The BB10 phones were genuinely good devices, but a smartphone without apps in 2013 was like a television with no channels. The hardware worked perfectly. The ecosystem was dead. And in the smartphone business, a dead ecosystem means a dead product regardless of how good the hardware is. In late 2013, John Chen replaced Thorsten Heinz as CEO. Chen was a turnaround specialist who immediately changed the company's direction entirely. He pivoted BlackBerry away from consumers and toward enterprise software and security. But before fully exiting hardware, one final attempt arrived. In 2015, BlackBerry released the Privier, an Android running slider phone with a physical keyboard hidden underneath. Fans appreciated the design, but the Priv couldn't reverse momentum that had been building against BlackBerry for years. The DTEK 50, Key 1, and Key 2 followed, each with dedicated fans who loved BlackBerry's design philosophy, none capable of changing the trajectory. By Q4 2016, BlackBerry smartphone shipments had fallen to 210,000 units globally for the entire quarter. Not in one market, not in one region, across the entire planet. A company that once sold 50 million devices per year was now selling 210,000 in 3 months. In September 2016, BlackBerry made the announcement that everyone had seen coming, but that still landed with the weight of a final verdict. The company was exiting the hardware business completely. No more BlackBerry phones would ever be manufactured. By early 2017, BlackBerry's smartphone market share rounded to 0.0%. The smartphone king had 0 phones to sell anywhere on Earth. The speed of the collapse is what makes it extraordinary beyond just the scale. BlackBerry didn't fade gradually. It fell off a cliff with accelerating velocity, each year's losses arriving faster and more devastating than the year before. 2008 was the peak. $150 stock price, $67 billion valuation, 50% of the US market. 2017 was the end. 0% market share, no phones to sell, no hardware future of any kind. Less than 1 decade separated those two realities. Mike Lazaridis built the greatest email device ever made. He just couldn't accept that the world was moving beyond email as the defining feature of a mobile device. That acceptance gap, the distance between what he saw and what was actually happening, cost $67 billion in value and the entire consumer business he had spent 30 years building. Under John Chen, BlackBerry rebuilt itself on the foundation it had always had but never fully monetized. The company became a cybersecurity software firm. The same security expertise that had protected governments and corporations for decades was now sold as enterprise software for networks, vehicles, and connected devices. Revenue collapsed from over $2 billion in 2016 to $656 million in 2023. The lowest since 2004, when BlackBerry was still a tiny company nobody had heard of. But the company stabilized and survived the worst of it. BlackBerry's QNX operating system now runs inside over 235 million vehicles worldwide. BMW, Toyota, and Ford all use BlackBerry software inside their cars. The technology that once ruled smartphones was now embedded in the machines people drove to work every morning. In 2022, BlackBerry shut down its legacy servers permanently. Every original BlackBerry device on Earth stopped working completely. BBM was gone. The physical keyboard was now a museum piece. The Crackberry addiction era was officially over. Users around the world woke up to devices that had become useless plastic and metal overnight. The phones that had once organized the professional world had become artifacts. The painful irony sits at the center of everything. BlackBerry's security technology was always world-class. The engineering was genuinely excellent. The failure wasn't the technology itself. It was the inability to wrap that technology in a consumer experience capable of competing with what Apple and Google were building. Apple had elegance and an ecosystem that made switching feel impossible. Google had openness and customization that gave developers and consumers exactly what they wanted. BlackBerry had security that nobody could match, but security alone couldn't compete against what the market had decided it wanted. The core technology survived the collapse. The product around it didn't. BlackBerry won the engineering war and lost the cultural one. And in consumer technology, culture always wins. Then in 2025, something nobody predicted happened on social media. A BlackBerry challenge went viral among Gen Z users across the world. Young people were abandoning their iPhones and Android phones for vintage BlackBerry handsets. They wanted digital detox using devices from before the infinite scroll era. The phones their parents had been addicted to a decade earlier were now being carried as acts of rebellion against the phones everyone uses now. The trend wasn't about BlackBerry as a brand or as a company. It was about what BlackBerry represented emotionally and culturally. Simplicity. No algorithmic feeds engineered to keep you scrolling forever. No TikTok systems designed to manipulate what you see next. No dopamine-engineered notifications calibrated to create compulsive checking behavior. Just email, messaging, and a physical keyboard that forced you to slow down and think before typing. The devices that failed to compete with modern smartphones succeeded as anti-smartphones. The rebellion wasn't against BlackBerry. It was against everything BlackBerry's successors had become. Meanwhile, a Chinese company called Xinhua Technologies announced the Q25, a modernized BlackBerry Classic clone running Android 14, priced at approximately $400. It pays homage to the original design while running a modern operating system. It proves that BlackBerry's design philosophy still carries cultural value, even though BlackBerry will never manufacture phones again. As of April 2026, BlackBerry produces 0 smartphones and will never manufacture one again. The company exists entirely as a cybersecurity software firm, but the cultural memory refuses to die. Viral challenges keep the name alive in the minds of generations who never owned one. Clone devices honor the design that defined an era. Nostalgia carries the memory of when Crackberry meant power, productivity, and the kind of addiction that presidents refuse to quit. Somewhere right now, a Gen Z teenager holds a vintage BlackBerry Bold. They type slowly on the physical keyboard, disconnected from social media, from algorithmic feeds, from the notification systems designed to own their attention. They aren't using it because it's better. They're using it because it's simpler, because it's more human, because it asks less of them and gives them something back that modern phones have quietly taken away. There's a profound irony in watching the device that lost the smartphone war become the symbol of resistance against the smartphones that won. The BlackBerry arc is complete. The technology was brilliant. The adaptability was non-existent. The gap between those two facts destroyed everything the company had built and created a warning that every dominant company in every industry should study carefully before they become the next example. Subscribe for more deep dives into the business stories that actually matter. Did you ever own a BlackBerry? Do you remember the addiction of push email and BBM?